parameter space left. And the ingredients that we really need to have naturally light Higgs that's consistent with what we've observed, and SUSY that still solves the hierarchy problem without introducing new hierarchy problems in the Higgs mass, are light stops and spottoms, light Higgs Zeno, and somewhat light gluinos. So that gives us these, so there's been a lot of interest in light stop searches at the LHC. And as you can see, it seems like pretty much almost all of this is completely rolled out, except for this tiny little bit of parameter space here where the stop and the top are nearly degenerate, and then you have this neutralino, or the mass splitting between the stop and the top is close to the mass split neutralino. So the next question coming up at LHC 14 is how can we get rid of that last bit of parameter space, or maybe observe SUSY in that tiny corner of parameter space. And a lot of people have been talking about direct stop production searches and how to make those better so that they can be more efficient. And a lot of these rely on like some more creative search strategies, like multivariate analysis. And a lot of people have been claiming that you can't get it with just cut and count methods. And I'm saying if you look at next to direct production and you have a class of models with the sbottom heavier than the stop, and you look at, instead of having a simplified model with just the stop and the neutralino, you could have the stop, the sbottom, and the neutralino. You can actually close this gap or rule out a lot of these models, and you have potential to rule them out in the 14T run. And the idea is that you get these TTWW final states that have really clean signals. And it's rare, but the question is it enough that you might be able to see something without having to do like some fancy
That means bottom is heavier than... Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And there are like a lot of models that have this.
Sure.
So for example, like John and Chaba and Mr. Randall have this minimal composite supersymmetric standard model that naturally accommodates a spectrum like this, where you have the sbottom heavier than the stop, so you can get sbottom to stop, or sbottom to stop plus neutralino.
But you would also get stop pair production.
Yeah, but the idea is that if you're saying we're blind to that in this region,
because the top is obscuring.
Yeah. So the problem is that a lot of people are saying we're blind to this unless we do something fancy. And I'm saying that for this class of models, maybe you don't have to do something that fancy. And obviously, the advantage to not doing something fancy is that theorists can see what you did and kind of reproduce it pretty easily without having some really complicated kind of blind black box going on. So yeah, it would be nice if we could do that. So here is the signal for our search. Sorry. Okay. So we can have sbottom to stop to gravitino, and then you can get 4 electrons from the 4 W's. You can also get a subleading contribution from the heavier stop to the lighter stop. This I only did for the spectrum that was for this spectrum with this more complete model where you have the 2 mass eigenstates of the stop. But for a simplified model, I just left this agnostic and just did sbottom to stop. Sorry. Yeah, and then I generated Monte Carlo events through MadGraph, Pythia, PGS pipeline, and I used the stop NLSP UFO model that Matt Reese wrote, which is basically just the MMSSM plus a stop, or plus a gravitino that's like a massless, very close to massless gravitino. All right, and I used the Atlas Multilepton search for kind of an idea of an experimentalist type thing. We have, these are the different things, and the things we would be caring about would be the Z-veto, so these 3 guys, and high mass effective, so maybe this one would be the best. And actually, it turns out that this bin does the best, because not all the leptons get counted.
Which bin?
This bin, which is weird because I'm not generating.
So I still don't know which of the 2 you're pointing to. You just point SR1 knows.
SR1 knows. Yeah, which is weird because it has a tau, and I didn't generate any taus, but it comes from the jets. So you get jets from the V jets, and they can fake towels enough to actually make the spin have a higher signal than everything else. And I thought that maybe PGS was overestimating like the towel fake rate, but actually it underestimates it. So.
Well, as Joanne Hewitt said at the Jack Gunyon Fest, towels in PGS suck.
So, but if it's underestimating towel
Certainly
rate,
underestimating the efficiency,
Yeah.
it's probably overestimating the fake rate.
so I was saying, I actually thought that it was underestimating the fake rate. Because if you like take the fake rate, it's like maybe 3% for jets to towels from the LHC, and then you just take the PGS, you can see that like,
What do you
depending
get?
on how many jets you have, you get the PGS is a little lower with fake rates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I can show you like what I did to double check
Sure,
it.
sure.
Maybe it's wrong, but I thought it was
probably just share with
actually.
you something.
Yeah, because I looked into it because I got like this really great efficiency in the spin, and I was like, I didn't make any towels in the PGS.
So this, so somehow, oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the idea is that the 4 leptons, when it goes to PGS, it doesn't have the technical. So.
But I mean, that somehow suggests that for this class of signal, I mean, do you understand why the cuts that they use to require a tau are somehow enhancing the signal?
Because
Do you
there's a
understand
lot.
that?
There's the B jets, and they can fake jets have a fake rate for towels. So like a jet could look like a hydronically decaying towel.
So you could probably improve this search for your model by instead of requiring a tau here, to require a B-jet to actually match
Yeah.
those cuts more to
Yeah.
what
So like a
the signal is.
multi-lepton plus B jet search would be better for this model. Yeah, that's
So
true.
could you go back to your process?
Yeah.
Just want to ask. Is it tau from a docket?
So no, I'm letting the W's decay to lepton and neutrino, and then I get those jets here, and then also I did do the sublead contribution where one of these goes to jets. So like I did have one of the W's go to jets, so there's 3 real leptons plus jets, and then you get a lot more big towels from the W going to jets.
So given the fact, you didn't allow the W to decay to taus?
No.
Maybe given the fact that your signal is largest in a tau bin, should we go back?
So yeah, I did want to go back and force it to go to towels, and the thing is, it doesn't happen very frequently, right? It's a very rare process.
It's a third of the ones that are going to leptons, so.
Yeah, so
So
I did it, and
one-third
it
of
didn't
your
really
leptons
enhance
are taus.
the signal very much, and generating 1,000 events, I would only get maybe 1 in that bin, so it would require like a lot more Monte Carlo studies.
But for that, did you do the detector simulation? So you get a very
It's
good.
generally 100 events, only one of the top
10,000 events.
10,000 for
No, that's not
Right.
right.
generally 10,000 with left.
So I
But
did
you
this a
have
long
many
time ago,
Ws,
so
you
I
have
could
many
look into it and
Ws
let you
here.
know.
Okay.
So
So maybe
many-
you miss that. I mean, you miss the tau in the detector, or you also just don't have it in the quantum level.
So yeah, I was like specifying the decay of the W at map graph level.
Oh, I see. And then the detail to decay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a third of your leptons should be taus, so you have a lot of Ws, so.
So it's
It should
not
be-
just taus, right? Because I'm talking about hydronically decaying taus. So there's some
Hmm.
small there's the probability that the W goes to taus, and then the
Yeah.
probability that the tau decays
About 2/3
hydronically.
of them go to hydronically. Right?
Yeah.
So I can look into it. I did sorry, this was like a few months ago, so I don't remember all the details. But I can let you know. It seemed like at the end of the day, it didn't make much of a difference. But
I'm really surprised, because if your signal bin is a tau bin, and a third of your leptons are taus, with 4 Ws, a large fraction of your events have 1 real tau in them. Of your signal events, so it seems like it would enhance, it should make a difference if your dominant signal is in a tau channel.
okay, well, I remember doing it and not coming up with maybe that it didn't make a difference, but I can look into it in more detail. I remember going down your line of reasoning and then looking into it more closely, and it didn't make a difference. But I'm sorry, it was a little while ago, so I don't really remember why. But yeah, I'll get back to you on why I decided it didn't make a difference. So yeah, but if
The
anything, it
acceptance is
would.
lower and the backgrounds are higher for the heteronically decaying tails.
Mhm.
So maybe that's what.
But her signal is coming from a bin that requires a hadronic towel.
That's fine. I'm just saying that if adding that to the analysis explicitly incurs more backgrounds, right?
The analysis is
Yeah,
the
it's already
analysis.
there.
She's not changing the analysis.
It's not changing.
The analysis requires a tau. She's just adding the signal, the tau part of the signal, to her signal.
Okay, then she should.
That should make it better. It can't
Yes,
make
yes,
it worse,
should. Yes,
right?
it should.
So if it does make it better, then this is a pessimistic understanding of what's going on, and maybe it'll get better like that. All right. So, so here are the backgrounds that are reported by the experimentalist. And then to get the background, so this is from the 8 TeV run, and then we're interested in seeing like the potential for discovery at 14 TeV. So the way I did that, which is not complete and needs to be done better, is that I took the effective cross section from the 8 TeV run for each bin, and I scaled it up using the next to leading order production cross sections for the underlying processes of 14 TeV to 8 TeV. So it ignores differences in the efficiency from the bins from the higher energy process. So the cuts might be a little different at different energies, but I just scaled it up using the production cross sections of both energies. So yeah, this is kind of a back of the envelope thing that needs to be done. And then, so this is just for the example spectrum 1, and you can see the tau bin does super well at 14 TeV, and at 8 TeV it isn't rolled out. So this one would be an example of a spectrum that could be ruled out at 20 inverse microbars, so the 14 TeV run isn't ruled out at 8 TeV.
So the backgrounds, you're scaling up the reported backgrounds from the search, from the Atlas search.
Yeah, from the Atlas search, using the next to leading order production cross sections of both energies for the underlying processes.
And that has efficiencies in it already, N sub B, you're using the experimental efficiencies.
Yeah, so I basically...
it really could be that have you checked whether you can reproduce NB in your simulation? Because
Yeah,
this would be explained if, for some reason, the efficiencies were completely wrong for finding tau.
Yeah, so that's definitely
Might
something
be a
that needs
lot
to be
more
done.
background.
I agree. So it
Right.
could be an energy thing. It could be like the efficiency of the bin could depend on the energy for sure. So that needs to be done.
Yeah, I guess they don't, going from 8 to 14,
Mhm.
somehow the signal goes up, but the background doesn't.
Okay, so this is unobserved, not unexpected. Actually, unexpected went up.
So I'm just imagining that if there's no
You
signal,
observed
we'll see
a slight
NB, right?
excess. So yeah, you observed an SS. The expected was something like 2, and it went up to 3, but you observed 4. I just reported the data, not the calculated expected background. Here, I scaled up the calculated expected background.
I see.
Yeah.
What about in the first bin? The first,
It's the same thing. So
same deal.
I think it was like 1.7, 1.6, maybe like 2,
Okay.
5.
I get it.
So yeah, sorry, these are not the same thing. I figured it would be better to actually compare it to data and not just.
Are there small, I guess the excess is kind of small across the board here, except for the second one.
Yeah, that's true.
Overall, is that significant? 2, 3, 7, 15, 18 compared to,
So this one's significant. These would become significant at,
Yes.
at like 50 inverse microbars.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like these are the ones. This is the one that's like. These are the ones that are definitely ignoring taus. And you can see how we scaled this up to 50 inverse microbars. These would become significant. So yeah. All right. And then these aren't, but they shouldn't be, right? Because we're forcing you to have a Z, and there's no Z's in the signal. So that makes sense.
By the way, question maybe for John or Max. So the taus not suck in PGS or Delphis? Do you know? Are they more? Is that more?
Actually, not sure they do in Delphis, but they, in order to get it to not suck in PGS, you really need to do multivariate tau ID signal background separation, really do a sophisticated treatment, which just isn't being implemented in PCA.
All right, so then, but just to remind you, so now what I've done so far is just had the Gravitino, which is very close to massless, less than 1 GeV, and that Reese's UFO model. And then so I expanded this small little parameter space and stop mass, and also varied bottom mass. So for the bin we all disagree with, some of it was excluded at 8 TeV. So using this line of reasoning, right, you could exclude some parameter space given what you've already seen. And so this bit that I cut out is the bit where you would have been able to rule out the signal because the number of expected events is too high at 8 TeV. And then so I just cut that out from the rest. And then here is the effective cross sections at 14 TeV. And then given different amounts of data, here's how much we would be able to rule out in the 14 TeV run. So I cut out the stuff that you wouldn't be able to comment on. So this is kind of like the reach. Yeah, and then so
But
for
the more
bins,
blue it is, the harder it is.
yeah,
So you go up, you go down.
yeah. So the idea is that if you have more data, you could maybe get more of your.
Sorry, what is the break at the stop mass of 183 or whatever it is?
It's just I just had 3 parameter points: 180, 185, and 188.
Oh, I see. I'm
Sorry, Mathematica isn't like super clear about it, but it's a really small parameter space.
I see. And so now, in terms of the colors, where roughly am I getting significance? I see that red is good, but for
So
exclusion,
anything that's
but-
not white is where you could is something you could exclude. So here is just
anything that's not white.
yeah. So here is just the effective cross section for the bin at 14 TeV, right? Cutting out what I said 8 TeV would rule out, right? And then here I cut out the things that you wouldn't be able to accept. You wouldn't be able to have a good significance for.
So when you say reach, you mean 2 sigma?
Like if you have 2 Poisson distributions around n background and n signal plus background, they're well separated enough that you could have a testing region, and there's like a less than 5% chance that you say you saw the signal when it was really background, and a less than 5% chance that you say you saw the signal plus background when it was just a downward. So it's like the 2 Poisson distributions are well separated. So it's
95% confidence level.
So it's 95% significant and a 95% power effective test. So there's 2 different. So I'm not really sure like if this is like how this translates to 95% confidence, but it seemed like the closest thing I understood that was close. I think it is 95%.
So the sigma here is a cross section
Yes,
in
effective cross section for the
in phantom bar.
Yes. All right, and then maybe a bin that is like of more interest to us because it doesn't have this shady tau thing going on is this bin where we just required more than 3 leptons and 50 GeV cut on the CET. It doesn't do as well. You only this is the reach with 100 inverse femtobarns, and when you get less, you really don't have much reach less than that. And then maybe the most interesting bin that I would think is this one where you have a cut on vicinity and a cut on the effective mass.
So can you go back to the first one?
Yeah.
Again?
No, the very first one.
The very first one. Sorry, so you're saying that you're sensitive to 1 femtobarn cross sections for the low mass thing? So you have, I'm a little surprised that you go that low somehow.
So if you have 20 inverse femtobarns of data, right, you could see 20 events that are signaled.
Right.
And if the background
Then
is
you're,
smaller, so the backgrounds will be the same as it was before, right? Oh, but I didn't report cross sections, I just reported the number of events. So with 20 inverse femtobarns,
you're
then
requiring
we
how
see
many
about
le-
3
you're-
events in the background.
So this is sigma, when you say 1/10 over, that's sigma times branching ratio.
Yes.
Well, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's sigma times
That
branching
makes
ratio.
sense. That makes sense.
So you'd see like 3 events in the background and 20 events. So that's like
Right.
totally reasonable. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah, it's an effective cross section for the bin, not a production cross section. And then then this is the bin that like kind of before I saw the town nonsense I believed the most in.
I'm just curious, how do you choose the stock mass bin?
How did I just choose the stop mass of 180, 185, and 188.
It's
188
really
is
just
kind of
3
like
points.
yeah, it's really just 3 points. It's not
Oh,
really
okay.
a bin. And 188 is just like the very bottom end of what isn't been rolled out yet. And it's also the spectrum one, the example spectrum mass that I use. So I wanted to stay consistent with that. So yeah. And then so this one does a little bit better with 50 inverse vector bars. You can get like this much of the you can get some parameter space rolled out. And then with 120, you can get a little more. So maybe 120 is too full, but 50 doesn't seem unreasonable.
It's just okay, why it's more symmetric.
What?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like once you get, so I guess like if you lose a lot of heavy bottoms, but you know maybe we want those bottoms to be lighter anyway. And then, so this is encouraging, work to come soon. So like the thing that, you know, a little bit more parameter space you could try and squeeze out would be like varying the neutralino mass and getting up in here. And then you could also like play the same game if you wanted with other signals. So here you would need some totally different process. But these are all 2 lepton searches. So the idea that if you had sbottom-mediated stop production, you could get like higher lepton searches, you might be able to get more parameter space ruled out here. Though I'm like not as convinced that this is like as necessary as it is here, because this is the point where people have been saying that you can't do it with button count searches. Whereas here maybe there's hope, you know, you just get more data and you move up. So my argument is if you do have this next to direct stop production, and you have a heavier spot, maybe you could squeeze out that parameter space for some classic models without doing some really special type of search. So yeah.
Am I remembering wrong? I seem to remember, I heard a talk by Antonio Delgado, and I thought there was some bound on stops exactly degenerate with tops. Am I hallucinating that? I thought I remember there is some experimental bound. I thought I even remembering CMS. CMS. Am I wrong?
So let's
Is that
see.
impossible?
I
It
think
was just
that
assuming
there
that
is.
just stop neutralino somehow.
So like it looks like this guy is getting really close. Maybe Fritz coming up from the other ends. But I'm not sure. There are a lot of bounds with like assumptions made.
Maybe that is the bound.
These seem to be like the bounds that are the most agnostic. So maybe there is something coming up from underneath here. But it doesn't hit 180, right? So it doesn't hit the parameter space I examined, but it might be close enough to
Yeah, maybe that's
totally
what I'm
degenerate.
remembering. Maybe that is the
So you can get to spot on 700 GeV.
Let's see.
That's what basically
It seems like, yeah. I mean, if you don't trust this guy, then yeah, if you had like a really light stop, you could. With stops around here, then you get 550.
Are there any extra handles? I mean, it'd be also interesting, I don't know if people have thought about, you know, if you believe in natural SUSY, right, the sbottom has to be somewhere, right? What you're focusing on is if it's heavier, can't be too heavy for natural, it's constrained by naturalness, but then you get this extra thing.
Yeah.
Then it, you know, naturally begs the question, well, what if it's lighter then, if it's more degenerate with the stop, right? You could still get, if it's, you know, if it's even, I guess that's the point. The point is unless it also decays, even if it's lighter, if it doesn't decay through the stop, if it's heavy, it doesn't matter. Maybe there's nothing. I was just wondering if there was some more, if you expanded the parameter space to consider both bottoms and stops, whether they're interesting constraints.
Yeah, so the main reason I'm focusing on this search is because I'm trying to get like the most spectacular signal you could, because there's hope in cut and count, right? Because the argument is that if you do direct stop correction, there is no hope there. That
And I
the top will
guess
always
it's
stop.
answered here because you are going down. I mean, is there any, let me ask it another way. I guess if you just kept going down in bottom
You
mass.
cut off at the 400.
Yeah, why you
So-
cut off at 400? You just keep going.
I think I cut off because of a bound on the bottom mass. Let's see. So I don't know how useful this slide will be because it's not super specific. But yeah, the bottom mass is getting ruled out, right?
Yeah, but that also depends on
Yeah, so these are
assumptions and
making some
branching
assumptions.
ratios.
Yeah.
And if you have this other decay will compete with that, right? So if bottoms are decayed dominantly to stops, that's not presumably what that bound is. The bound is
Yeah.
presumably bottom goes to bottom neutralino. That's the standard bottom switch.
But if the bottom is lighter than the stop,
Yeah,
then that would be a
that's
dominant
different thing.
production.
Then you
Yeah.
could consider the decay the other way around. And, it depends on the model, what the branching ratios are, but a sensible approach is just to use a simplified model where that's the only decay and then just quote a bound on sigma times branching ratio. So I would think those, since there's branching ratios there, it's not a binary ruled out, not ruled out. Yeah, it's like you said, it's just a question of what sigma times branching ratio is, and it's an interesting number, I would think, for smaller values of the bottom mass also.
Yeah, so I could do that. I guess I would have to look really carefully at the bottom bounds and see, because a lot of other searches could be covering similar parameters.
Well, if your simplified model is that bottom decays 100% to stop neutralino, you only have to look for searches that would, be sensitive to that,
All right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Bottom doesn't dictate the top.
sorry, stop W. Stop, thank you. Weak decays of the bottom. Bottom goes to stop. It's the same thing that she's assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have Gruino pair production, it will decay to top stop also can be used for leptons. Right?
Mhm.
Because Gruino has much bigger cross-section,
So for my simplified model, I wasn't considering it, but I could look into it for the spectrum one where I have a more complete particles. The idea was decouple everything except the spot on the stop and the neutralino. But yeah, I could look into that and see if there's more enhancement there.
Like even the bounds, maybe. I mean, the bounds
I mean,
already on the gluino, maybe. You
Yeah,
expect it to
my
be small.
feeling is there are no holes in those bounds. They're just, the only thing you can do is push the gluino heavier. There really are no holes in those
For the
bounds.
gluino, it's very hard.
Because if you try to make it really light, then you just have this enormous cross-section and you're screwed. So the only thing and there are no holes once you're making it heavier, so, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I would
just,
guess,
that is the really, those searches don't have any holes except making gluino heavier, as far as I know. Maybe Dirac gluinos can help a little bit.
Okay, are there other questions for Richard? Okay, if not, let's thank Richard.